Subcommittee convenes today to examine the enforcement of our immigration laws. Prior to Inauguration Day, the border was secure. The laws were being enforced. The border wall was nearing completion. The Remain in Mexico policy had slowed illegal immigration to a trickle, and court-ordered deportations were being enforced. Of course, all of that changed when the new administration took office and immediately canceled the border wall, ended the Remain in Mexico policy, and ordered ICE to stop enforcing deportation orders. Since then, we've seen more than 2 million illegal immigrants deliberately released into this country, a population the size of the entire state of Nebraska. Meanwhile, more than 1.5 million known gotaways have also entered illegally, an additional illegal population the size of Hawaii. Our previous hearings have documented the unfolding human tragedy of the border crisis. For Americans, it means classrooms flooded with non-English speaking students, hospitals overwhelmed with illegal immigrants demanding care, fentanyl poisoning our young people, catastrophic strains on the social safety net meant to help Americans in need, criminal cartels and their affiliated gangs introduced into our communities, working wages suppressed by a flood of cheap illegal labor. And now we observe the irony of officials in so-called sanctuary cities like New York and Chicago and sanctuary states like California warning that they cannot handle this influx. For the illegal immigrants, it means a harrowing ordeal, subjecting them to exploitation by the criminal cartels, including sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and labor trafficking, even of small children. Many arrive in physical distress, destitute, and deeply in debt to their human smugglers. Thousands never make it. They die horrific deaths along the way. Well, now we raise the question, why? Clearly, our immigration laws are not being enforced by this administration. That fact is self-evident when we compare this administration to the last one. The law specifically provides that any asylum claimant shall be detained while their claim is heard. This is now routinely ignored. The law specifically provides that parole is to be granted only on a case-by-case basis for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit. This law is now being ignored, while parole is granted en masse to release many tens of thousands of immigrants illegally into our country. The law requires deportation orders to be enforced, yet despite record numbers of illegal entries, we see the lowest rate of deportations in our history, with more than 1 million deportation orders simply ignored. Federal courts have ordered this administration to enforce the law, yet time and again the administration seems reluctant to do so. Without enforcement, there is no immigration law. Without immigration law, there are no borders, and without borders, we have no country. This crisis now reaches into every community and constitutes a clear and present danger to our national sovereignty, prosperity, and security. We Americans have always prided ourselves as being a nation of laws and not of men. And yet it appears that our immigration laws are now routinely ignored, altered, or perverted by the whims of individuals within this administration. It's important in the inquiry today that we separate out policy differences from actual violations of law. The founders anticipated that foolish people would sometimes occupy the offices of our government, and they left it to voters to correct maladministration at the ballot box. Lincoln put it this way: the voters are everything. If the voters get their backsides too close to the fire, they'll just have to sit on the blisters a while. Mayor Eric Adams of New York City seems to be a poster child for this phenomenon. The more troubling question arises if this unprecedented illegal migration results not from incompetence and folly, but rather from a deliberate and calculated violation and subversion of the laws of the land. We need to determine what laws have allowed this calamity to befall our nation. As a legislative branch of government, it's our duty to correct them. And we also need to determine what laws are being willfully violated by those commanded to faithfully execute them. And in that case, we need to identify who is responsible and what remedies are available within our system of checks and balances.